Gwen Walz.
Good afternoon. Thanks so much for having me here. It's not every day that I get to be at the Veterans and Military Families Council. This is something else. So how are you doing? Right? How am I? Thanks for asking. Yeah, thanks for asking. This is all pretty exciting, right? And Tim and I and our children, you know, the ones who put the bunny ears behind them on CNN or MSNBC or whatever it was, we are all honored. And we're so honored by all of you to be able to serve for and with you. We were and are, because once you are, a military family. And I know there are lots of things and, you know, lots of terms. And these military terms, you know, I had to think for just a minute. I call him Mayor Pete. When he was saying NCO, I'm like, oh yeah, non-commissioned officer. I'm going back into my things, right, rolling them through my head. And thank you for that wonderful introduction. Very, very special. And to feel that support is really great. But we are a military family and lived through a deployment. I know some of the information that's out there right now makes it seem like Tim may not have been deployed, but he was. And Hope was about 2.5 years old when he was deployed in support of Operation Enduring Freedom, which is how we've always talked about it. And I like that word support, because that was at the time when National Guard hadn't been used in overseas conflicts and wars and all of those sort of places. And so they were just beginning to use the National Guard in that way. Hope was 2.5, and Tim was gone. I don't want to give you the exact days because, you know, someone will count them and say she was short one or long one, but just saying. But he was gone a while. And so I put candy in a jar because Hope was 2.5. And each day we'd take a piece of candy out. And I told her that when the jar was empty, then Dad would be home. And I had to refill that candy jar, but because she was 2.5, she hadn't figured that part of it out yet. She's 23 now, so she would have me on that one. But we would talk about that, and I said, when that jar is empty, then Dad will be home, right? And so many of you and so many military families have served in ways that are so extraordinary. You all have. You all have, and I want to say thank you for your service. Thank you. Yeah. Yes. And so when Tim did come home, and Hope was about 3.5, right, in that summer, and that is when we started asking some real questions about the direction of our country. And we started thinking about what we might do to serve in that way. And so we got involved in trying to elect John Kerry. And that was our first political involvement ever, right? That was our first frame for that. And when John Kerry didn't win, we thought, what does this mean now? What does this mean for our military families, for the National Guard, for the state of the world? What does this mean now? And as we tried to ask what it was that we could do and answer questions about what we could do, we decided that a place that we could do that was in the United States Congress. And that's how we made that decision. And when you want to impact what's happening in places, a way to do that is to impact the funding. And the way you impact the funding is you run for the United States Congress because they're in charge of the money. So that is how we made that decision, like smart teachers focused on service. Thank you very much. I wanted to come today just so you would know who I was too. So you would know that I understand and I hear you and I thank you and I'm honored to serve with you in our next effort here. My name is Gwen and I am a proud new member of the team, Harris Walz. Woo! Woo! And I'd like to think that you're all a new member of that team too. So thank you. I cannot think of a better team, right, than we have right here. Tim and Kamala have spent their lives fighting for middle-class families, families like the ones they grew up in. Tim signed up for the National Guard just right after his 17th birthday. His dad took him to that field. The farmer got off the tractor because they were the recruiting person too, and they signed up, right? I would like to just tell you two things from my point of view. I think that that was very important to Tim's father, a Korean veteran, for Tim to sign up because his father knew he was dying of cancer. And he was worried about how Tim was going to get through college. And he was thinking about what the military had done for him. And he thought that might be a good thing for Tim too, and a chance to serve in a way for his family and a chance to get an education. And I only know that because I didn't know Tim's father. I only know that by reading things that he wrote to Tim and by really looking at personal documents. I also think his dad thought, this is a spirited young man, and basic training might be a really great idea between his junior and senior year. I'm just going to be honest with you. I think it worked out well for him. I think he came back like right before football camp began, and then that was a good use of his energy then. So you know, I'm speaking to the choir right here. So I think that chance for everyone, for every single person to have a chance or an opportunity and chase that American dream was how his father saw Tim's service and signing up in the National Guard. I think together, Kamala and Tim will fight for a future that all of us, all of our sons and daughters and families, no matter how we choose to serve, will have that chance and opportunity. Now, as I said, it's just been a little more than a week that we have joined this effort. And so I wanted a chance to just say in my own words a little bit about who I am, who I think Tim is, and what our service has been about. So, like all of you, I wear many different hats. Lots of good hats in this room. But I'm going to say that in my own way. I wear lots of different shoes. Okay? Yeah. I'm a mom. I'm a sister. I'm a friend. I'm a retired military spouse, right? And I'm currently the First Lady of Minnesota, which is an honor also. But more, yeah, thank you. But how I've spent my career is as an educator and a teacher, something I still do to this day. Are there any teachers in this room? Thank you for your work. Thank you for your work, teachers. It is back to school and we feel that in our bones, don't we? No matter if you're retired or not, you may still find yourself wandering around Target in the pen and pencil aisle. We can't help it. We just end up there. It's like a gravitational pull right around this time of year. And that's how Tim and I first met. And I just want to tell you a little bit about that, too. We were both teaching in Nebraska. Do you know what he taught? Social studies. Very good. That was a little pop quiz there, right? And I taught English. And in the school where we were, that wasn't a school with a lot of money or a lot of resources, they had an old choir room, and they needed the space, so they put a divider right down the middle. And he taught on one side, and I taught on the other, right? There was a very thin divider, and this will not surprise you, but his class was a little louder than mine. There was a lot of energy in that classroom, but I knew right away. And the first thing I knew about him and the first thing he knew about me was that we both believed that education could be transformative, and that's really important because we saw that firsthand. And here's how we partner, because I want you to know this too. There was a young man named Waylon who was on Tim's football team. He was a player. And he was a student in my English classroom that year. And he was brilliant on the football field, but difficult in my classroom. You all maybe know some students like this. Some of you may have been students like that. Maybe? Maybe. But Waylon particularly was reading way below grade level. And he was acting out because he didn't want his peers to know that he wasn't a good reader, and he didn't want me to know that he wasn't a good reader. But in our school at that time, if you were failing a core class, you couldn't participate in sports, right? And, you know, football was the reason Waylon came to school. It was the thing that he loved the most. And so I understood that if that was taken away from him, right, like school wasn't going to be a priority for him. So I huddled with Coach Walz, and I came up with a plan. We came up with a plan. And we said to Waylon, here's the deal. If you come in for reading tutoring with me, my name was Miss Whipple at the time, then, and you'd come in before school or at lunch or after school or whenever we would figure it out, but you had to come in and you had to be working hard, then you can keep playing football. And Waylon said, okay. And I knew that was a little bit of a risk, right? Because he was going to have to show me really what he could and couldn't do. But he did, and he worked hard. And Waylon's reading began to improve, and he continued the tutoring even after the season ended. We never discussed it. We just kept reading. Tim would often cross that thin divider in our classroom to read with Waylon. And they would read together, and Waylon would talk about the book he was reading, and Tim would suggest further books to read, and we had conversations about literature and about reading. And more than anything else, Tim cheered him on. That happened off the field. And at the end of the year, Waylon had confidence both on and off the field. He graduated from high school, and he had a chance and a shot to succeed because, you see, Tim and I worked together to see every individual child we could, to meet them where they were, to empower them, and to find a way to value who they were, what they needed, because we believed in them and the power of each and every individual. And we still feel that way to this day, because that's what informs policy making, that's what informs decision making, that's what is involved in service, and that's how you put your lives together. And we're very, very proud of all of our service, both as teachers, in the military, and in every other way we've had an opportunity to do so. And I will put that up against what anybody else has done any day of the week. Tim believes so strongly that every student, every child, every person deserves a chance to get ahead. And he lived that both in the military and in schools and in the rest of his life. And I know that is a commitment that Vice President Harris shares also. And most importantly for us, as we go forth from this convention and do our work, it is a vision that they will fight for every single day in the White House. And as we build this future together, you and I and Tim and Kamala and the people we have served alongside with, and in our communities and in our neighborhoods, we're going to know this. We are building a future for all of us, for each and every one of us, that we can be proud of.
Yes, ma'am.
Last thing I want to tell you about myself is that something my mom always said to me. Now, you don't know my mom, but you know my mom. She is 86. She'll be here tomorrow night, and she's still the church organist. She still gives piano lessons. She's a retired teacher, and she still sometimes substitutes at the school in PE. Yeah. My grandmother just passed away at 104 and a half. So I'm barely middle-aged. But here's what my mom would say to me. She would say as I was growing up, Gwen, you must do the work that is in front of you. And I thought what that meant at that time was the dishes, right? Right? Or picking up my room or something. But I grew to understand that that was a very profound statement about how one sees life. And it's advice that's both thoughtful and actionable. And what she was asking me to do was to use my own eyes, my own way of seeing, to look at what my service might look like and to honor the service of what others do and care about. But she was challenging me every day to look at that, to see what was in front of me and see what gifts and talents I had to offer and what a difference hard work would make. And it is something that I think about many times a day so that I might listen and hear each and every individual and respect each and every individual and know the true meaning of service and learn more about it from people like all of you and other people at this convention, because I have much to learn, and so does Tim. We think good teachers are just really good learners. And so we're asking you to join us on that journey. And as delegates to this convention, you already embody my mom's advice. So if you run into her, don't worry. You're already there, right? But we have 77 days, people. 77 days to go, right? Not long. So I am asking you to see this through your own eyes. I am asking you to share that idea and to join together in that idea of what this might look like. We must volunteer, right? We must bring friends. We must donate. We must make calls. We must bake bars for the people who are making the calls, right? We must door knock. We must make bars. I like bars for the people who are door knocking. Do you all know what bars are? You know, like lemon bars and Special K bars and all those kinds of bars. Yeah. Yes. We must do all the things, whatever we can do. Nothing is too small. Nothing is too large. And I will tell you, nothing is greater than one other thing, because we need every single person to serve in every single way that they possibly can. And I know this, if we do that together, you, me, Tim, Kamala, all of our friends, our neighbors, people from our past and our present, we're going to win. That's right. We're going to win. When Tim ran for Congress in 2006, people were not optimistic. You know, it was a tough district, and we had no political experience per se, except for being carry captains. That was it, signing people up. But we knew we could learn, and they would say to us, what was the last thing you've been elected to? And I would say, well, Tim was the homecoming king. That is not a ringing endorsement for Congress, they felt. But I'm going to tell you this. In 2006, we won a race nobody thought we could win, not even the Democrats at that time. And we won it. And we won that race 5 more times and held that seat for 12 years in the United States Congress. And we voted for health care and all kinds of important things. We were majority makers. And Tim became the ranking member on the VA committee, and he was relentless on that committee, and he fights hard every single day for veterans. And then we ran for governor because we saw that the decision-making was moving toward a state level, and we felt like that was a really important place to serve. And that's why we did it, because we saw that happening. And he ran for governor, and he was elected. And then he ran for governor again, and he was re-elected. We have never lost a political race, and we don't intend to start now. That is right, because this is what we know. When we fight, we win. When we fight, we win. And when we fight, we win. Thank you for your service, and we'll see you out there on the trail. Woohoo!
Thank you, Mrs. Walz, for your remarks. And next up is one of my big sisters and very close friend, Congresswoman Jennifer McClellan.